We are from St Gabriel's College and we are also members of London Citizens.
Today we are at Brixton Hill Methodist Church to speak to the ministers about housing and faith.
I think that goes right to the heart of what this church is about. Because we have the people from all the community around, many of them now are being affected particularly by the real crisis there is in housing in this area. There are people who've lived here in many cases all their lives, certainly in many cases the older people who perhaps were married here, have been here 40, 50 years. This is so much their spiritual home, and yet the homes where they actually live are becoming more and more difficult to maintain because those who are renting are facing massive increases in rent. There's less and less support for them. And many of the older people are seeing their children, so the younger generation, having to move away because they can't live here at all. And there's that feeling of families being divided, whereas people want to live close together, and it's good for the different generations to be together. And yet it's the younger generations that are so often being forced out, and housing is a crucial part of that.
Well, I think the Bible does say something about housing, and the passage that we chose for this study series was the story of a rich man and Lazarus. And it's a story of a man who has a lovely house, he's very wealthy, but at his door, at his gates, there is a beggar sleeping rough called Lazarus. And Lazarus relies on begging, that's the only way he can survive. And the story tells about what happens to them when they both die. And there is a judgment, and the rich man is judged because he's been living in his rich house and has not looked after, this man at his gate who was very visibly in need. And I think that story says a lot, doesn't it, about London today. We have the rich who can afford the nice houses, and yet at their gates there are lots of very poor people who are struggling just to keep a roof over their house and over their heads. And there are many people who have nowhere to live at all.
Well, I live in the area, and so I'm very close to what happens and goes on in the area. And one of the concerns I have is that I see space where people could build homes not being used or utilised. Just opposite where I live, there's a large building plot that it was a large warehouse. It's been demolished, and there were plans to build luxury housing on that particular site, and it's just laying waste at the moment. And it's only one of a number of plots like that in my vicinity where I live that I'm very conscious of as places where there's potential to build houses, but it's not being utilised. And to my mind, it seems as if it's almost a deliberate thing by the people who have purchased the land to allow it to just be vacant, knowing that the value is rising all the time. And when anything is built there, it's going to be out of the ability of ordinary people to purchase homes there, because it seems to be happening. I've only got to pick up a newspaper, and I see all right the way through London how wealthy entrepreneurs have come in, bought land and property, and don't intend to live there, but just use it as an investment.